Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so pleased that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. It is Tuesday, it is 3 p.m. ET, a very special time for Crime Time because today we have a very special guest. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15, going on 16 novels of suspense. My current novel is One Wrong Word, which is cleverly displayed on the door behind me because, of course, you put your books on the door. That's what you do. And my new book comes out next year called All This Could Be Yours. And we will talk about that when the time comes, which is not now, because now is the time to talk about one of the buzziest books of the year, All the Colors of the Dark by the fabulous Chris Whitaker. And we are so honored and thrilled to have Chris Whitaker with us today from Hertfordshire in the UK. Let me just tell you really, really quickly. I promise you, hey, Shannon Hansen, and I see Randy is here from Barnes& Noble and Emily and London. So nice to see you all. I'm just going to babble for 2 seconds and then I totally will let Chris talk in a minute. But you are so lucky, you all, that you came to Crime Time today. This book is one of my favorites, I want to say of the year, but that just sort of doesn't seem like enough. It is To Kill a Mockingbird and Shawshank Redemption and Thornton Wilder's Our Town and Mark Helprin's Winter's Tale. It is up there. It is that good. All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. I am not exaggerating about it. And if you don't believe me, but what you should, believe Jenna Bush Hager, who has picked this as the Jenna Book Club pick for July for the Today Show. And it is July, you all. So you know what that means. Chris will be coming to the Today Show very, very soon. And we will all watch. You have to promise that you'll watch and cheer him on, because by that time, you will have read this book, and by that time you will feel as strongly about it as I do, and Chris will be your friend as well. So as I said, Chris is coming to us from England today, from Hertfordshire, and Chris has just been in the US and is now home. Have your feet touched the ground? You have an instant New York Times bestseller, an instant Washington Post bestseller, an instant USA Today bestseller, 2 New York Times lists, as if one weren't enough. What are you thinking about that?
I am still in the kind of, the headspace where it's not quite real. I was doing all right. I was traveling around the US doing the tour, and the jet lag didn't really get me. And then at the very end, I had to go from San Diego to Dublin to do the Irish launch, and it was like 2 time zones. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I don't know where I am anymore. But I haven't stopped smiling, and people haven't stopped messaging me about the book, which has just been keeping me going and just making me happy.
I don't think in my life, not only my life as an author, but my life as a person who reads, I'm not sure I've ever heard as much praise and as many loving accolades as I have for All the Colors of the Dark. It's quite extraordinary. What are you hearing? Tell me what you're hearing.
Yeah, I get that. It's been staggering to me as well. Like, because you finish the book, and everyone's worked really hard on it, and it's taken 4 years, and you kind of hear what industry people think of the book long before it actually goes out into the hands of readers, and so I knew that people really liked it, but still, until it gets out into the wider world, you don't know for sure. But now I'm hearing just dozens of messages every day, best book I've ever read, and it's really like a pinch me moment, and I think people are just connecting with the characters in a way that I did, but and a way that I hoped everyone would, but didn't expect it in any way.
Well, we'll hear in a minute about the book, but the idea that, and I'm going to ask you everything about it, and you all will hear the background and where the idea came from and about some of the characters and all the kinds of extraordinary things in this novel. But it is interesting that it seems that this is the perfect time for this book. It's inspirational, it's uplifting, it's hopeful, it's an escape, it's fast-paced. Do you think there's something about, I don't want to say zeitgeist or timing that played into this at all?
I don't know. because I've been living with it for 4 years and writing it for 4 years and living with these characters for so long, and they kind of came into my head before that. It's hard for me to know what I've tapped into, really, other than giving people, I think, characters that they truly care about. And I think if you can do that, the rest is not less important, but certainly it helps massively, because I've had people message about, a connection they feel to Saint or to Patch or to Sammy or to someone in the book. And I've had people messaging, saying that it's reminding them why they love reading so much.
Reminding them why they love reading so much is such a thing to hear for someone like you who's worked in libraries and been through the whole spectrum of human experience. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We're talking with Chris Whitaker about All the Colors of the Dark. Let me take a moment to say, if you are new to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze, you should know that A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic, more than 4 years ago now, by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us all talking about books, to keep our reading and writing community together, to having you learn about your new favorite authors and keeping up with your already favorite authors. And that is why we are here today. A couple dozen volunteers going strong for the past 4 years and persevering into the future. Let me tell you a little bit. Oh, before I forget. Oh, Barbara Pataski says, I loved your book. I couldn't put it down. All the twists and turns were fabulous. And that, good. Hold that up at every turn. Vicki Gregory says, Chris is a new author to me. Thrilled to meet you. Lucky you. Vicki. Shannon Hansen is here, and Julie Brinkley. And Leslie Lloyd says, please don't make us wait so long for the next book. And Mary Garrett says, I need more hours in the day just to keep up. Just take a couple hours and read this book. Thank you, Fran. Never get tired of hearing you two. I think Fran was with us at an Unlikely
Story. Okay.
Nice to see you again. Nice to see you again. Let me tell you that there is a giveaway. Yes, there is a giveaway. Chris and his publisher are giving away a copy, and it will be a nice hardcover book, not this. Look how battered mine look.
I know, mine's battered as well.
Carrying it around, sort of hugging it, to one lucky commenter. So leave a question or a comment in the chat before the show is over at about 3:40, and we will spin the wheel of fun, as you know, and pick a winner. So
I can't wait for the wheel of fun. I'm really looking forward to the wheel of fun.
I wish we could do it now because it is pretty great. And I always think there should be music with it, but we'll see if we can ever get that. Anyway, All the Colors of the Dark. Leave a question or a comment and you will be entered to win. If you are not a winner, you know what to do. Click, 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 run. Go get this book before they are all gone. It is quite amazing. But don't go right now because I want you to hear all about Chris Whitaker. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris, and then I promise I'll stop talking and we will let Chris have his turn in the spotlight. Chris Whitaker is an award-winning author of Tall Oaks, All the Wicked Girls, We Begin at the End, and The Forevers, which is a YA novel. An instant New York Times and international bestseller, We Begin at the End, his previous book, was a Waterstones Thriller of the Month, a Barnes & Noble Book Club pick, and a Good Morning America Buzz pick. The novel won the CWA Gold Dagger Award, which I think I see behind you on your shelf, and the Ned Kelly International Award, and numerous other awards around the world. And there we go. Yay, I got it. Visual aids. We have visual aids. We Begin at the End, again, his previous book, has been translated into 29 languages, with screen rights going to Disney, where Hamilton director Thomas Kail and producing partner Jennifer Todd will develop the book for television. That's his previous book. That isn't even All the Colors of the Dark. And wait till you hear what's going to happen to this. But you're going to read it first. So as I said, his newest book is All the Colors of the Dark, which debuted on 2 New York Times bestseller lists and the USA Today bestseller list and the Washington Post bestseller list and probably every other one that ever exists in the universe. And I will stop talking now and let Chris tell you about the book. So Chris, Leslie said something that was very interesting that I just missed about that she was lucky enough to get a copy of it at Harrogate via a book club.
I'll be at Harrogate next weekend. I think it is, not this one, the one after. Yeah, it's Harrogate again. Amazingly, every year there's a Harrogate festival.
And it was crossed my mind to ask you if you knew in any way what day of the week it was, but we'll just go on from there because I don't see how you can keep track of the days or the times
No,
or
I
whatever.
think it's around Christmas time at the moment. That's right.
Whatever, whatever. Anyway, tell us a little bit about All the Colors of the Dark. How did you describe it to someone when you first talked about it, and what did it turn out to be?
So it began as a really simple kind of, my top line pitch was two abducted teenagers fall in love in the pitch black basement they're being held in, having never seen each other. The boy, Patch, escapes and can't find his way back to the girl, Grace. The police don't believe that she's real. They think that he made her up because of the trauma that was going on down there, but he knows in his heart that she is. And so what follows is a big 27-year search for this girl who he believes is the love of his life, and he gets himself into a lot of trouble along the way, and so that was the simple pitch. Yeah.
It's interesting because the pitch of two teenagers held in a dark basement and who have not seen each other, and when
Mm-hmm.
they escape, one looks for the other, as you say, is a very crystal image.
It
But
is.
you turned that into a book that's 600 pages long, that is absolutely a page turner at every moment. I could not put it down. What did the book then turn into, would you say?
I think because the kind of top line pitch sounds a bit like a mystery and a bit like a thriller, a bit like a missing person thriller, I stretched it into a book about, about what happens when things go wrong when you're a child, what
Mhm.
happens when something bad happens to you when you're a kid, and whether you can kind of outrun the shadow cast, or whether you can shake it off, and whether your future's kind of predetermined because of this thing that's happened. And obviously, if you're going to follow someone over 27 years of their life, it's going to encompass everything that makes a life, all the things that happen in their lives. So you get a coming of age story, you get a book about family, about parenting, about first love. You've got two kids preparing to go to their first prom together, and then you've got a book about, what it means to become an adult, and what love really means, and all of these big questions, but they're answered in quite an organic way. It's not like there's a big kind of reveal. It just feels like, it felt like a natural way to tell their story.
It's interesting too, because in all of those genres that you mentioned, a coming of age story, a thriller, a mystery, a missing person story, there's an arc of a novel that thriller readers and mystery readers and coming of age story readers are used to. There's a pace, and
There
somehow you managed to. I mean, you talk about expanding it, but what you really did, I think, is you enriched it and you built it and you made it textured and layered and so incredibly realistic. Talk a little bit about the. It's such a total immersion book, Chris. How
Mhm.
much was that top of mind to you, or did it just emerge? I mean, I don't mean to make it easy, but did it emerge to you as you wrote it?
I think that because I spent so long writing it, I think it began as one thing and ended up as
Mhm.
something else, but also became many different things throughout the life of writing it. Like, I started off just writing dialogue between Patch and Saint. So you have Patch at the beginning of the book. Patch is 13 and he wears an eye patch because he
Let
was
me just
born with.
interrupt you for 1 second. Forgive me, but let's do. I want to introduce. So Chris will now. I want you to tell us about Patch, who is one of the main characters of the
Yes.
novel, and he's the character who we begin our journey with. So he's who we first meet. Tell us. Okay, now tell us a little bit about Patch.
So it's 1975 in Missouri. Patch is a teenager walking to school. He wears an eye patch. When he was little, his mum told him he was a pirate because it kind of softened the blow of having to wear an eye patch every day because he has one eye. And so when he was little, he adopted this persona of a pirate. But now, as he's becoming a teenager, it's becoming something else. And he's walking to school and he hears a scream. He hears a girl scream, and straight away, without thinking about it, he intervenes. He sees the girl being abducted. He intervenes, gets stabbed, gets taken instead of the girl. The girl runs away and escapes. Patch gets taken, and then from then on, it's about this kind of divergence. Because he's a normal a normal schoolboy living in a small town, and then all of a sudden he's plunged into this nightmare. And meanwhile, his best friend Saint, who is also 13 and kind of bookish, capable, very clever, quieter, she is completely lost. Like, that's her only friend. She's bereft. She's been left behind, and the police can't find Patch, and so she begins to look for him. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that when he comes back, when he's eventually found, it's a different Patch that comes back, and I think that's really hard for both of them to take.
And it's a novel of obsession too, because Patch is trying to find this mysterious person who may or may not been taken with him and hidden in the dark basement with him. And Saint is obsessed with finding out what happened to them and who did this to him or them, however it turns out to be. Talk a little bit about obsession and why that is such a powerful motivation for each of them and for other people in the book, and an engine for your novel.
Well, I think Patch is slightly lost. You know, even before he goes into this basement, he's slightly at odds with the world. His dad died in Vietnam. His mum doesn't really know how to be a mum. So his future is kind of, it's not laid out for him already, but he kind of feels like he's never going to escape this small town. You know, he's doomed to repeat the mistakes his mum's made. And then he has something to kind of fight for. He comes out of there believing this girl Grace is kind of the love of his life. You know, he definitely falls in love with her down there. And meanwhile, Saint is completely besotted with Patch, and he comes back, and all of a sudden she's got this different boy that comes back. You know, it's not the Patch that she remembers. And she finds out that he's completely obsessed with finding Grace, and Grace is kind of, in a weird way, her rival.
Yes.
You know, her rival for Patch's attention. Before, it was just the two of them. They were kind of really close, and now they're not close anymore. And she believes that the only way to get Patch back, to bring him back to her, or to kind of bring him home, is to find Grace and help him find Grace. So, you know, as much as Patch's life completely changes when he goes into the basement, Saints does too. You know, she is a girl that is heading for, you know, an Ivy League school, and she's just, everything is kind of there for her, you know, there for her to take. But she becomes as obsessed as Patch does, much to the dismay of her grandmother, who can see how dangerous this way of thinking is, and really doesn't want her to.
And it's fascinating because two things. One, Grace may or may not exist.
Mm-hmm.
So Patch may be looking for someone who is imaginary, and Saint doesn't know whether Grace really exists either. But she does know that there is some bad guy who took someone. And on the other end of that story is the person who Patch saved. And she plays, I mean, she's a wonderful character, and she plays a major role in the story as well. Can you tell us about her too?
Yeah, that's Misty. So Misty is the town beauty. She is the daughter of the wealthiest people in town. She lives in a big house kind of in the hill that looks down over the rest of the town. And she is, I won't say spoiled in any way, but she has everything that anyone could want, she has. And then Patch is kind of in love with her a little bit before he goes in, you know, in the way that she's the most popular girl in school. He would dream about talking, even getting up the courage to talk to her. He's kind of been slightly infatuated, and much to Saint's displeasure. And then he does this thing, you know, he saves her life. He saves her from the fate that befalls him. And so when he comes back, not only does Saint have to contend with Grace, she also has to contend with Misty, who feels slightly indebted to Patch for what happened, but also is kind of fascinated by him, you know, by this boy that risked his life for her. He's unlike anyone she's ever met before.
And parenthetically, two things. Parenthetically, one of the wonderful things about your characterization of Patch is that as the book begins, he's sort of this strange, one-eyed, misfit child who grows into being a kind of a heartthrob, which was very surprising and very lovely. And I know, and it's interesting that you were, and I want to rewind a little bit to what you were saying earlier, about when something terrible happens to you in your childhood, can you leave the dark shadows behind? And I think readers should know when they read this book, kind of where that came from. What from your life went into that? How did you grasp that?
Yeah, so when I was writing Patch, he has this moment that I've just spoken about, this moment where his life changes completely, and I think mine came when I was 10. My parents divorced, and my mum was dating someone new, and he was a drinker. He used to get quite angry, and I was asleep one night, and he came in and pulled me out of bed, and we both heard my arm break, and he wouldn't let me get any help that night. So I was back in my bedroom, told to be quiet. I had a very long night, as a 10-year-old in a lot of pain. I had a really long night waiting for morning so that I could get some help. And then I had to tell my mum and my dad that I'd done it playing football. And I remember distinctly feeling like a different person the next day. Like I feel like I didn't sleep well after that. I stopped sleeping, and have had like a lifetime of sleep problems, and I feel like I was a fairly normal. I don't like the word normal, but I felt like I was a fairly normal boy before that night, and then the next night, and from then onwards, feel like my life was on a slightly different course. And that was something I wanted to explore in All the Colors of the Dark, whether we can alter that course or whether some things are kind of predetermined.
I mean, it feels like parts of you have altered that course for
Yeah.
you. How did you do that?
I think when I've talked before about when I was I left school without any qualifications. I just completely lost interest in school after that happened, and I was working as a real estate agent, putting leaflets through people's doors, and someone came up to mug me for my cell phone. They asked to borrow it, and I thought I was going to get mugged. And I think that when I was a 10-year-old, I didn't like feeling like a victim, and so when this guy tried to take my phone off me, I would rather fight him than give him my phone, and so I did, and we had a bit of a fight, and he pulled out a kitchen knife, and I remember looking at it, firstly thinking he wasn't going to use it, and also thinking there's no way I'm giving you my phone, which is like kind of mad. When I think about it now, I'm 42 now, I was 19 then. When I think back to it, I think what a crazy thing to do, but it wasn't a conscious choice. Like in the book, Patch steps in when he sees Misty being abducted, and afterwards people tell him he's brave. And Patch says, how can it be brave if I didn't think about it, if I didn't consider it? And that's definitely what happened to me. And so I ended up getting stabbed 3 times, and I was in a really bad way, and ended up with PTSD afterwards, which I didn't know was PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
But went to the library and got a self-help book, and found my way to writing through that. So without a doubt, I wouldn't have found my way into to being here now talking to you about a new book that I've written had I not been stabbed. And I don't think I would have been stabbed had I not had my arm broken when I was a kid.
What do you think about that? I mean, that's your book, isn't it? That is exactly how you expressed it. It is a horrible, horrific tragedy, disaster happening to a kid, and climbing their way out of it and becoming who they are today, which you do so poignantly and gorgeously. As Katie says, shows how you can overcome some of the trauma from the past by dealing with it, and in some way sort of knit up the raveled edge of your personal past by this novel, which is, I mean, you should, when we're finished, you should look at all the comments. People are touched and loving and affection. Denise says, having to lie to your parents out of fear is terrible. And Randy says, leaving the dark shadows behind and childhood traumas and difficulties is what appeals to me about the story. So much love, and so much love from all of you. Julie says, thank you for sharing that part of your story with us. Shannon says, definitely sounds like a must buy. Shannon, you always know, and you are so right. Chris, you it goes without saying that you're a Brit. You are not American. You don't live in the United States. And this book is the most thoroughly American sounding, feeling novel that you can possibly imagine. How on earth did you create the Midwest and so many other places? It's sort of a travelogue, a wonderful, poignant travelogue of the country. For 27 years so authentically. How do you immerse yourself like that?
With like painstaking research over many years. I don't know. It feels like it doesn't feel. It's going to sound really weird, but it doesn't feel foreign to me. It feels closer to home, and that's because when I went to the library and borrowed the self-help book, it talked about a technique where you take the traumatic incident and you write about it, but you turn the people involved into fictional characters. You change the ending to something you can control, and you change the location to the last place you were happy. And my dad took us to Disney World, me and my brother, when I was a kid, and so that when I was 19 doing this writing as therapy, that was kind of my happy place. And so when I sat down at my computer at my desk in London, like mentally traveling 4,000 miles away, I could leave my problems behind in London and just set up somewhere new, and write about characters that didn't have all of my problems, and kind of there's a transference definitely between me and the characters, but there's also some distance. There's a safe geographical distance. But as for getting it right, a lot of it is gut feeling, which sounds weird as well, but I kind of know, when I'm writing it, I'll go through like 500,000 words to get back to 130 that we're going to end up with. And I'll know that they're the right 130,000 words because they'll feel right. Just like I'll know that I'll do endless research, like maps, travel guides, things like that, non-fiction, fiction, watching TV, stuff like that. But I will know if it feels right. And if it feels right to me, I've learned that it feels right to everyone else.
I mean, I see that map of the United States on your wall, another visual aid. And I think, no amount of research, having a map of the US and even looking at pictures on the computer or even doing Google Maps or Google Earth can't give you the scent and the weather and the, from in this book, it has, about ballet and fishing and the theater and what's in a forest and how to build a house. I mean, step by step, how to build a house and movies of the time and music of the time. There are songs that after reading this book, again, if you just joined us, you lucky people, we're talking about All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. There are songs that still go through my head, weeks after having read this song. And how do you aggregate the fullness, the layers? It's not just geography, but it's a whole point of view and a whole style and a whole feeling. How do you do that?
I build each scene, I paint in a painstaking way. I will know that I'm going to write. Say there's a part in the book where Patch leaves school. He has no interest in school, wants to earn money so that he can go out hunting and looking for Grace. And so he leaves school and gets a job in a mine. And I knew that this part that would describe him being in the mine it's like a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs, but that was a month's work. That was knowing exactly what happens in a mine in Missouri in 1978, I think it would have been 79, something like that. So knowing what does it smell like down there? What does it sound like? And then we slowly begin to build this scene. And it maybe takes a month of work. And then I get it into a stage where I'm happy with it, for an editor to read. And then I'll go back and go over it again, and I'll strip out what's not necessary, because often you end up with something that's completely overwritten, and then you'll strip it back and back and back until you have the feeling that you need, but in the sparsest way possible. And like, if you do that for 600 pages, that's how you end up with the book.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the 600 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It spans 27 years of several people's lives, all of whom grow and intertwine with each other, who leave and come back, who have effects that we don't, dominoes that fall that we don't know until later. It's so intertwined and so layered. How do you keep track of it? How do you keep track of it?
I don't really at first. So the first year I spend writing dialogue, getting to know the characters. And then the second year I write out of order. So the kind of like the way they film TV, I might write something that's coming on page 500 on the first day, and then I'll keep doing that, and I'll keep building and building and building, and then it's only in the third year that I begin to put it back into some kind of order, and it begins to look like, the book, or closer to the book that you've got in your hand now. But year 4 is when editors come in, and everyone begins to help, and so it's just it's a strange process.
You all are sitting here seeing me look all calm and nodding like, oh, yes, I understand that. And that is just the farthest thing from the truth. I'm thinking, how on earth? That is not the way you write a book. I have no idea what he's talking about. This is writing dialogue for a year and then writing things out of order. Don't try this at home, you all. If you
if you think about the people in your life, think about the relationships in your life. Like with your friends, with your partner, how did you get to know them? It would have been through conversation, first of all. And so if I start writing a conversation between Patch and Saint and begin building and building and building and get deeper into their backgrounds, but in their own words, then I find that I know them way better than if I just start watching them. If I just start watching Patch do what he does at the beginning, I won't really know why, and those things are really important to me.
Was the dialogue, and forgive me for this into the writing weeds, but was the dialogue that you wrote or that came from them part of the story, or just you getting to know them?
It becomes part of the story. So I might scrap, tens of thousands of words at first, but definitely it becomes like some of the best scenes in the book, and the best dialogue is written in that first year.
We are completely running out of time, and this is so ridiculous. But let me ask you one more sort of writing question.
Mm-hmm.
Your style. This is a marvelous story, a brilliant immersive story told in a spectacularly unique style. And you all know that when an author sends in a manuscript, it goes at one point to the copy editor, who is supposed to smash it into proper grammar. And did your copy editor just give up on you and say, just do whatever you want?
I really feel for her as well, because she really has her work cut out with me. And I thank her at the end of the book, in the acknowledgements, because she, it's so tough, because I know that it's not, a lot of it isn't grammatically correct. Like I'll be splicing commas, things like that. It just needs to read right to me. And sometimes, perfect grammar gets in the way of that. And it can feel a bit like stilted and jerky and things like that, and stop-start. And so I do pretty much what I want. But this is way better. Like We Begin at the End, I think, was even worse, with the comma splicing and things. I think this is closer to, or as close as I'm ever going to get to correct English.
Well, I'm a big fan of the comma splice. I'm a big comma splice.
Yeah.
But what you've created is a mixture of authentic American way, an authentically American way of talking, with poetry, and that is how all of the colors of the dark evolves. And I will tell you this with no, again, London is saying, I am loving this interview. Barbara says, every time I listen to Chris talk about his book, it just makes me want to meet it sooner. That's marvelous. And Kathy Lanigan says, can't wait to read this book. No spoilers at all in any way. And there are so many characters that we didn't even talk about, some of whom, see, there's your copy editor, some of whom I don't even want to mention, because I don't want you to even know they exist, you readers. But if I even read the last line of this book, the last couple of lines of this book out loud to you all, I would not be able to get through it without crying. I have read it several times, and I could not get through it without crying. How can you talk a little bit about just the emotion of coming to the end, and how you wrap up an epic novel?
I knew where I was headed, from the very beginning. I don't do any planning, but I knew how I wanted the book to end, and I wanted to kind of answer that question. The question that I asked at the beginning of talking to you, if something bad happens to you when you're a kid, are you still free to write your own ending? And I really wanted to answer that for Patch. And I think that I did. But like that last line, I sat on that for like maybe 2 months or something. I just couldn't write it, and I couldn't find the last paragraph. I couldn't get quite right, and I knew that I needed to, because I kind of owed it to the characters, because I spent all this time with them, and I knew that I owed it to the readers who had gone on this huge journey with me. And then it came quite late, actually. I think I was like a year past my deadline anyway, but like, I think everyone was starting to lose patience with me, and starting to think, am I ever going to deliver this book? And so when the line came, I knew that it was the right one, and I'd been waiting for it.
Even though they were impatient, they're probably pretty happy about it now. And I realized as I read that line that it is actually an answer to a question that's asked earlier in the book.
And most things are in the book. Yeah, there's no like throwaways. That there's something that happens on page 1. There's something that's described that later becomes really important on page 560 or something like that. Yeah, it's supposed to be where it's supposed to be.
What is it about the writer brain? And this will be my last question, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. Chris, I know that you're exhausted from your book tour. We are so pleased that you are here. But what do you think? I mean, through the travails that you have been in your life, and this isn't the half of it, you all go to Chris's website, look at his other interviews. You'll see the kinds of things that Chris has evolved into this blockbuster author, and a seemingly, well, you look pretty happy to me, person from. What do you think about how writing did that, and how you discovered this is your writing brain. How you discovered your writing brain, and what you think about that?
I think that it was hard earned. I think that because of all the things that I went through, I think that I have a better understanding of the characters that I write, for sure. Patch in the book, he begins painting. He begins painting his idea of Grace, what she looks like. And he finds out he's a really gifted artist and becomes a wealthy, kind of very well-known artist. And this is something he wouldn't have found. There's no way. He was a kid that probably wouldn't have left the town that he grew up in. And he is a kid that ends up traveling around the whole of the US, seeing the most wonderful things, experiencing amazing things, making beautiful art. And that only happened because of something terrible that happened to him. And so I feel slightly like that. I feel like I went to a school that wasn't very good. I got into loads of trouble, got into loads of fights all the time, things like that. There's no way I would have found my way to becoming a writer had I not been stabbed, had I not had a difficult childhood.
And that's where we get all the colors of the dark. You listen to what Chris said about Patch becoming an artist, and now part of the derivation of the cover and how they were kept in the dark for a year with a person who might be imaginary and who might not be. You'll just have to read the book to find out what the rest of the cover and the title actually mean. It is worth it, worth it, worth it. Sherry says, now I want to read the last line. Do not do that, Sherry. Don't. I do it because I'm a writer, and also because I don't want to cry that much. I just inoculate myself from it. So don't read it. Just pick it up. Give yourself some time, because you will not want to put this down. I promise you. I totally promise you. Let's take some questions if you have a couple minutes from the audience. Great. Julie, what song? That's so great. What song do you feel best represents the novel? There are several songs mentioned in here.
There's so many, isn't there? So Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters by Elton John is one that Saint plays to Patch very early on in their relationship, in their friendship. Saint is a gifted pianist, and she kind of works up the courage to just sit there and play and sings, and then it's a song that later comes into the book again and again and again. So that one probably, but there's also I can't tell you why, because it'd be a spoiler, but Rainbow Connection. But that's a big part of this book. So.
And I'm walking, just for me, I'm walking around our house to my husband's chagrin, just bellowing "Hopelessly Devoted."
That's Misty's favorite song, and Patch is probably Patch's least favorite song.
Well, sorry about that, but I love it, and it's so. But you see, you all, how meaningful that is. Hopelessly devoted. How many people in this novel, people we have not even mentioned, also are hopelessly devoted to each other in so many ways. It is Perfect. I'm going to stop babbling. Let's take another question. Yes, Mark, thank you. Can you describe your daily writing process and rituals? Thanks for coming, Mark. Nice to see you.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, I write every single day. I used to give myself a word count when I was starting out. So like book 1 and 2, I'd tell myself I had to write X amount of words. But I don't think that's the best way to do it, because you end up writing just to hit your target so that you can stop for the day. And sometimes you end up writing stuff that you know isn't good enough, isn't going to make the cut, which is fine for a first draft, but becomes problematic if you keep doing it, which I did for, I think it was the second book. I kept doing the word count again and again. I overwrote loads. I tend to write late at night because I don't sleep that well, and I've got 3 kids, and I like a quiet house, and I like that feeling, when you feel like the world's asleep around you. I kind of like that peacefulness, and then like afternoon is not a great time for writing for me. That kind of lull from 2 p.m. till like 6. It's like, yeah. So I try and avoid those times.
So writing at night is all the colors of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Again, let me interrupt. I know that someone will ask, and if somebody hasn't asked, I'm going to ask now. Tell us about, you're going to read the book first, you all. Of course, you're going to read the book first. But tell us a little bit about Hollywood, movies, JENNA, any of that?
Yes. Yeah. So JENNA Bush Hager is the most lovely, brilliant, talented supporter of the book. And I met her online for a Zoom meeting about a year ago. Found out that it was going to be the book club pick, and then and took loads of meetings with people. Like I flew to New York and had this surreal time where I was like, all these studios were pitching to me after reading a very early draft of the book, and I was at like, I didn't like it because they had read such an early version, and I thought, this book is, it's not finished, you shouldn't be reading it yet. But probably it was really close to the finished version, and no one but me would notice the differences. But JENNA teamed up with Universal and Stu Nagel, who was the boss at HBO for like 10 years, and they're adapting it into a TV series written by Sarah Gubbins, who's amazing. So they're like the most talented, caring people to have, working on your book, and they got it like I got it, and like I dreamed of people getting it. They care about it as much as I do.
Yeah, we do care about it. It's such an epic novel. It can't be a movie. It's
TV series. Yeah, they're talking about 3 seasons for 1 book.
That's amazing. Yeah, I cannot wait. Denise says, yippee, a TV series. Barbara says, dare we ask if he is writing another 4th?
I'm always writing. I never write more than 1 thing at once. So as soon as this finished, I began very slowly writing the dialogue for the new book, which is called The Timekeeper, and is a bit, I would say, the time traveler's wife meets The Fault in Our Stars. Yeah. So
nice. We'll have to talk about my new book that I'm writing too, because it's not the same, but we're in the same brain space.
Yeah. Well, mine won't be ready for like 20 years. So.
Mine won't either. I totally won't either. Do we have time for one more question? Deborah, perfect question. How do you personally celebrate a book launch?
You find some time, Deborah, which I'm unable to do at the moment, because I did the US, then I did Ireland, now I'm doing UK, then I'm back to the US, then I do Europe. So I think, like, my birthday's in November, I think it starts to go quieter in November. So I will celebrate by, I think, looking back. I've been taking loads of photos and videos and things like that, and that's so not like me. I'm normally the last person to remember, but my publicist kept saying, like, make sure you document it. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm just going to take some time to look back over what's going on at the moment, with the book. Like number 2, New York Times, it's mind blowing for someone like me, didn't do well at school, no creative writing courses or MA or anything. It's hard to fathom, I think.
Well, you're talking about your celebration of the book. I will talk about all of the rest of us celebrating this book. We're celebrating this book every day, not just on your pub day. Thank you so much for the gift of all the colors of the dark, Chris. Thank you. Let's spin the wheel of fun. and see,
finally, let's spin the wheel.
spin the wheel of fun and find out who will win a copy of this novel. And here, see, it needs music. It totally
does.
needs music. And the winner is, here we go, Randy Gravitz. That's fantastic. Randy is a marvelous veteran, wonderful, marvelous veteran of Crime Time, and is a stalwart and works at Barnes and Noble. So he is the perfect person to get his own copy of this book from you. Thank you so much. Quickly, before I let Chris go, let me tell you, and before I let you go, let me tell you that in about 15 minutes, come right back here to Crime Time, where we will speak with the fantastic Hannah Mary McKinnon. You know her. She's one of my dearest friends in writing. We do first chapter fun together. This is her, I don't know, something like 8th book, Only One Survives, which is sort of a rock band stranded in a cabin, an all-female rock band stranded in a cabin. And at the bottom it says, what really happened to the bittersweet? So Hannah has created a band that somehow faces a lot of disaster. So do not miss. Geneva Rose on the front says, rock and roll with a dash or two of murder. Only one survives. So come back in about 15 minutes and we will chat with Hannah Mary McKinnon, whose book doesn't come out till next week, but you're going to hear about it here first. Meanwhile, Chris Whitaker, thank you. Standing ovation to you.
Thank you for having me.
Much love to all. We are very grateful that you were here today. Get some sleep. Stop floating. Well, don't stop floating. Don't ever stop floating.
Never.
And the rest of you, remember, we'll see you next time. And it's always safe inside a book. Thank you so much for coming. Love you so much.